Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah.
You know, we love getting requests from you guys, and this one was really interesting. A listener sent in a review of the screenplay for Clint Eastwood's new movie, Juror, #2, and, well, we just had to dig into this one.
Yeah, it seems like a really timely film, with all the conversations happening around justice and accountability.
Exactly, and what caught our eye was how this film uses a courtroom setting to explore some pretty heavy moral questions.
It's like a classic setup with a really wild twist. The screenplay takes that familiar 12 Angry Men scenario, where you have a jury deliberating on what seems like a pretty straightforward case.
Right, seems simple enough.
Exactly, but then it throws in this curveball, this layer of personal conflict that just completely flips the script.
Okay, so let's break it down for our listeners.
Right.
We have Justin Kemp, just an average guy who gets called for jury duty.
Right. Totally relatable.
He ends up on a case where a man is accused of murdering his girlfriend. Seems pretty open and shut at first.
Yeah, a classic courtroom drama.
But here's where things get really interesting. As the trial goes on, Justin starts to realize that he might actually be connected to the crime.
Oh, wow.
And not just connected. He starts to suspect that he might even be responsible for it.
That's a game changer.
Right. And that's where the real drama kicks in. The screenplay puts you right inside Justin's head, and you can practically feel the pressure building as he grapples with this impossible decision. Does he confess, risk his own freedom to potentially save an innocent man?
Oh, man, that's a tough one.
Or does he keep quiet, protect himself, and possibly let a guilty man go free?
Talk about a moral dilemma.
It's like the walls are closing in on him. And from what we read in the review, it seems like the courtroom itself becomes this battleground for Justin's conscience.
I can see that. Each piece of evidence that's presented, every argument that's made, it all just adds to his internal turmoil.
Exactly. And to make matters worse, it seems like the screenplay really cranks up the tension. It keeps you constantly aware of Justin's struggle as it plays out against this backdrop of the trial.
Yeah, you see him wrestling with his guilt, trying to figure out what really happened, and all the while he's supposed to be making an impartial judgment about someone else's fate.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Just thinking about the pressure he must be under.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that, it seems like the screenplay uses the other jurors to turn up the heat even more.
How so?
Well, there's a cop on the jury who starts to get suspicious of Justin.
Uh-oh.
He senses that something's not quite right, and that just adds another layer of complexity to Justin's predicament.
Right. Now, he's not only battling his own guilt, but he's also trying to avoid being caught by another juror who, represents the very system of justice that he might be trying to manipulate.
Exactly. It's like a psychological thriller unfolding within a courtroom drama. You have the external plot of the trial, but then you have this hidden internal struggle that only the audience is privy to.
It makes you wonder how anyone could possibly stay composed under that kind of pressure.
And that's what seems so compelling about this screenplay. It really delves into the psychological strain of making moral choices, and it forces the audience to ask themselves the same questions that are tormenting Justin.
What would you do in that situation? Where do you draw the line between self-preservation and doing the right thing?
It's not simply about legal guilt or innocence anymore. It goes deeper than that. It's about personal ethics, about how far you're willing to go to protect yourself, even if it means potentially condemning an innocent person.
And that's the thing, it's not always so clear-cut.
Right. It's not black and white.
Exactly. The screenplay doesn't give you any easy answers. It forces you to sit with that discomfort, to confront those gray areas of morality, and to recognize that sometimes, even in the pursuit of justice, there can be these unintended consequences.
The reviewer also mentioned that the prosecutor Faith is a key part of this whole equation.
Oh, how so?
Well, from what we read, she's portrayed as this incredibly sharp and driven prosecutor who's completely determined to uncover the truth.
So in a way, she represents that unwavering pursuit of justice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But for Justin, her relentlessness is a constant threat. Every question she asks, every piece of evidence she presents, it all pushes him closer to the edge of exposure.
It's almost like she's unknowingly tightening the noose around his neck.
Right. Her commitment to justice is the very thing that could lead to his downfall. Talk about irony.
The screenplay really seems to play with that irony. It sets up this dynamic where the pursuit of justice, which is obviously a good thing, could actually result in a miscarriage of justice if Justin's secret comes to light.
It makes you think about the complexities of the legal system and how even the best intentions can sometimes backfire.
For sure. And for the audience, it creates this unbearable suspense.
Yeah, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop, wondering when and if Faith will uncover Justin's connection to the crime.
It's like the courtroom scenes become these high-stakes moments where the external drama of the trial and Justin's internal turmoil, they just collide. It's a pressure cooker of emotions, and you're right there with him feeling the weight of his choices.
I can only imagine. It's almost like this screenplay turns the whole courtroom into this metaphor for Justin's internal struggle.
Oh, I like that. How so?
Well, on one side, you have the prosecution. They represent this external force of justice that's closing in on him.
Yeah, I see that.
And then on the other side, there's Justin, right in the middle of it all.
Trapped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trying to maintain this facade of innocence while he's battling his own guilt and fear.
It's like his own personal trial is happening at the same time as the actual trial.
Right. And the screenplay uses that setting the courtroom to really ratchet up the tension.
I can see how that would work. Every legal maneuver, every piece of evidence, it all becomes a potential threat to Justin's carefully constructed facade.
And it's not just the lawyers, it's the other jurors, too. They're like this Greek chorus watching his every move.
Yeah, and judging him even if they don't realize it.
Exactly. They're judging not only the defendant on trial, but also Justin himself.
And that collective gaze has to add to his sense of isolation and paranoia.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's surrounded by people who believe he's this upstanding citizen, a fair and impartial juror.
Right. While inside, he's carrying this secret that could completely destroy their perception of him.
It really makes you think about the power of secrets and how they can eat away at a person.
Yeah, and in Justin's case, it's not just some personal secret. It's a secret that could have huge consequences for the outcome of the whole trial.
And that's where that moral dilemma really hits hard. Does Justin put his own well-being first, or does he risk everything to make sure that justice is served, even if it means exposing his own possible involvement in the crime?
That's a heavy question.
It is. And the reviewer actually brought up an interesting point. They suggested that the story might have been even more compelling if Justin had intentionally tried to frame the innocent man.
Whoa, now that's a whole other level.
Right. What do you think about that?
I mean, if Justin was purposely manipulating the system, that would add a whole new layer of moral complexity to the story. It would make us question his motives even more deeply.
It would make you wonder, is he genuinely remorseful for something he might have done accidentally?
Or is he just cold and calculating, willing to sacrifice another person's life to save his own?
Right. It would definitely make the audience question whether they could still sympathize with him.
For sure. I mean, if he was intentionally framing someone, he'd be more of an anti-hero, right? Someone whose actions are both reprehensible and understandable at the same time.
Exactly. It's that tension between empathy and judgment that could make the whole experience even more gripping. You'd be torn between rooting for him to succeed in his deception and hoping that justice prevails, even if it means his downfall.
Yeah, I can see that. But even without that added layer of manipulation, the screenplay still manages to create this really captivating narrative.
Oh, definitely. The tension builds as the trial goes on, and you're constantly on edge, wondering if and when Justin's secrets are going to come out.
It's like the screenplay uses the structure of the trial itself to create this ticking clock.
Oh, I see it.
The sense that time is running out for Justin as the pieces of the puzzle start falling into place.
And the way the screenplay slowly reveals information, both about the case and about Justin's past, it keeps the audience hooked and wanting more.
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion.
I love that analogy.
With each new revelation, we get a deeper understanding of the characters and their motivations, and the stakes just keep getting higher with every scene.
It sounds like the screenplay does a really good job of balancing those reveals with the actual courtroom action.
Yeah, creating a narrative that's both intellectually stimulating and emotionally gripping.
The reviewer also talked about Clint Eastwood's directing style. You know, he's known for using first drafts of screenplays and shooting scenes in just 1 or 2 takes.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. How do you think that approach might affect the film's portrayal of Justin's internal struggle?
Well, Eastwood seems to really value rawness and authenticity in his films. So sticking with that initial vision might allow him to capture this level of emotional intensity that feels more genuine and unrehearsed.
It's like he's stripping away all the artificiality of filmmaking, right? He's not overthinking it, just letting the story unfold naturally.
Exactly. Relying on the actors to convey the emotions in the moment. And in a story like this, where the internal conflict is so central, that approach could be really powerful.
It could give the audience a much more visceral sense of Justin's turmoil.
Yeah, allowing us to connect with him on a deeper, more human level.
So it's not just about the words on the page, it's about how those words come to life on screen.
Right, and Eastwood's directing style has the potential to really amplify the screenplay's exploration of moral ambiguity and psychological tension.
It makes you wonder how different directors might interpret the same material.
It's fascinating to think of, right? Eastwood might emphasize the psychological realism of the story, while another director might focus on the legal intricacies or the broader social implications of the case.
Yeah, it really highlights how the same story can be told in completely different ways, and how much the director's vision can influence the whole viewing experience. But let's circle back to the screenplay itself. What really stood out to you about how it deals with the theme of justice?
I think what's so fascinating is how it kind of turns our expectations about justice on their head. You know, it presents this whole situation where the pursuit of justice, like what the prosecutor is doing, could actually lead to the wrong person being convicted.
Yeah, it's like it's saying justice isn't always so straightforward.
Right. There are all these gray gray areas, these moral complexities that the legal system sometimes just can't handle.
In Justin's case, it's like the system itself becomes this double-edged sword.
Oh, I see that.
It's the very thing that could either expose him or let him get away with it. It really makes you think about how much our own personal biases and perspectives can color how we see justice.
And it raises this question: can anyone truly be objective when they're so personally invested in the outcome of a trial? If we were in Justin's shoes, wouldn't we all be tempted to sway the jury to our side, even if it meant kind of bending the truth a little?
That's the human element that the screenplay really gets at. It's not just some theoretical exercise in legal ethics.
Right. It's about real people facing these impossible choices.
Exactly. Choices that don't have easy answers. And it's not just Justin who's wrestling with these choices.
Oh, right. The other jurors, too.
Yeah. They're dealing with their own biases and preconceived notions as they're trying to figure out what really happened.
Makes you wonder if any jury can ever be truly impartial.
Especially in a case like this that's so emotionally charged.
Right. So much is at stake. And I think that's the big question the screenplay leaves us with.
It's a question that doesn't have any easy answers. And maybe that's the whole point. It's a reminder that justice is complex and sometimes it's just out of reach.
It's not always attainable.
Exactly. And even with the best intentions, we can't always guarantee a fair outcome.
It's definitely a thought-provoking message. And it makes you think about the choices we all make in our own lives.
And how those choices affect other people, even in ways we might not realize.
Right. The screenplay uses this courtroom setting as a way to look at society as a whole.
Yeah, a place where our personal choices bump up against these bigger systems of justice and morality.
It reminds us that we all have a part to play in shaping the world around us.
And that our decisions, even the ones that seem small, can have ripple effects that we never imagined.
So the next time any of us get called for jury duty, we should think about Justin Kemp's story.
And remember the responsibility that comes with judging another person.
And how our own experiences and biases might be influencing how we see the truth.
Because justice isn't some fixed thing. It's something we're always working towards.
It's an ongoing process.
Right, a process of having these conversations and really examining our own beliefs.
And sometimes the most important judgments are the ones we make within ourselves as we grapple with our own sense of right and wrong.
That's a great point.
Well, this has been a really incredible deep dive into the screenplay for Juror #2. It seems like Clint Eastwood's new film has the potential to be a really powerful and thought-provoking exploration of justice, morality, and what it means to be human.
I agree. It's definitely going on my watch list.
Mine too. And to our listener, we hope this deep dive gave you a lot to think about.
About the nature of truth and justice and the choices we face when we're confronted with these impossible dilemmas.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.